Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are you all doing tonight? Today is Saturday, May 18th. And as I said last week, this will be the last episode of the month. I have prior engagements that I have to take care of for the next 2 weeks. And so we will not be back until, let me see, the 8th of June. Until then, I hope everyone will go through our log. With that being said, today's discussion is all about pizza. There's no such thing as the perfect... Oh, wait. Yes, there is. Yes, there is such a thing as the perfect pizza, and I know what it is, and we're going to talk about it. Before we do, I would like to go ahead and introduce my co-hosts. The first one, our redneck from the South, living in South Carolina. Please introduce yourself, Stoner.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Fuck South Carolina. On top of that, let's go ahead and introduce our... Let's go ahead and introduce our resident Canuckistani from the Soviet state of Canuckistan, our dirty Frenchy Frenchman, Dale. Please say hello, Dale.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and you don't even have to say it. I'll say it. Fuck Canada.
Fuck Canada. Fuck Canuckistan. With all of that, today, again, we are talking pizza all the time, and of course we are going to go off track because we are ADHD as fuck. Let's go ahead and start with everyone's favorite pizza. Favorite chain pizza. And we'll start that one off with Stoner. Stoner, what is your favorite chain pizza? And if you say Little Caesars, I'm going to stab you.
Didn't we just talk about this before the show? If you want Little Caesars, you better off going to the grocery store and buying a frozen pizza. You'll save money doing that.
No, you won't.
Yeah, it depends on what kind of pizza you buy.
Just in carbs alone, Little Caesars is much more cost effective than frozen pizza.
Oh, my favorite chain pizza.
Yes.
I can't really make up my mind. It's either Pizza Hut or Papa John's. It's just whatever I'm in the mood for.
Let's go with Papa John's because Pizza Hut has been shit since the 90s.
Can't really argue there.
And from there, we'll go to Dale. Dale, what is your favorite chain?
Hard to say. I don't order much chain pizza because I'm surrounded by a lot better pizza places than chain pizzas down here in
Suck a
Montreal.
dick.
But if I had to choose, I think the most palatable at the moment would probably be Domino's. I know it used to suck a lot more than it does now. It's improved to a point where it's now of reasonable quality if I don't have access to... If for some reason all the other pizza places closed down, probably stick to Domino's. It's sure as fuck better than Little Caesars or Pizza Hut.
Okay, what is Ro talking about?
Arco's a local pizza joint. I haven't had them yet.
Mark, okay. She typed macro.
One thing I will say to Domino's credit that I've noticed a lot of other places don't seem to get right is they know how to make a reasonably well done pizza. They actually get the cheese nice and crisp, unlike certain other places. Pizza, a local Canadian shitty pizza chain. At least Domino's can actually get the cheese nice and crisp when you order it well done.
So, Stoner, preempting today's discussion, is talking about pigs in our stream chat. asking, are there really more pigs in Iowa than there are people? And yes, there's about 23.4 million pigs on Iowa farms.
That's a large police department.
For every one Iowan, there are 7.3 pigs.
How in the world do you get 0.3 of a pig?
With a hatchet.
It must have been a runt.
It's called a meat grinder for a reason.
No, that 0.3, I think that's a runt. It doesn't count as a full pig.
Okay, so the entire reason we're talking about pizza today is because there is a very important staple in Iowa and the northern Midwest called Happy Joe's. Happy Joe's is one of the key parts of any Iowan growing up. In fact, my graduation from high school, my graduation party was at a Happy Joe's in Iowa. I have a very special place in my heart for Happy Joe's Pizza. Unfortunately, Happy Joe's is not what it once was. So Happy Joe's started in 1972. It was created by a man named Lawrence Joseph Happy Joe. Oh, what's his last name? I actually told you about this morning, Stoner. Happy Joe's Pizza history, or Happy Joe's history. Whitty. Lawrence Joseph Happy Joe Whitty. Now, the thing about this is he was born during the Depression. He contracted bacterial meningitis as a child, and he beat it with no side effects. And he kept going through all of these trials as a kid. He kept getting punched in the fucking face by life. And when he became an adult, he got started in the food industry. And he kept collecting more skills, learning more about food service and food prep. And before Happy Joe's Pizza, he had 2 other businesses. Both failed. But after he worked as the Shakey's pizza manager, he created his own pizza joint, Happy Joe's, which was a nickname given to him by his family because you could not beat his good attitude. And so in 1972, in Davenport, Iowa, he started Happy Joe's. And it was just a small mom and pop. They expanded a little bit throughout Iowa over, 20 years. And then in the 90s, things changed. When a lot of companies would move over from the U.S. to places like China and other foreign markets, quality in the U.S. would drop. And Iowans started recognizing the drop in quality, especially in Pizza Hut. Because Pizza Hut was the dominant force in the early 90s. So when Pizza Hut started working in other markets, Happy Joe's gained a lot of strength because they did not sacrifice quality for customers. And it's always been a very expensive pizza. And I found out why today. But because it's always been very expensive, people have always been kind of adverse to spending that money on pizza when there's cheaper pizzas that, may not be healthy for you, but at least the flavor would be there. And then when quality dropped, well, you can't really expect quality out of cheap shit all the time. And so Happy Joe's grew. First, they muscled out Little Caesars in Iowa. That went away. They muscled down Pizza Hut, Papa John's, Domino's for a long period of time in Iowa and through major parts of the northern Midwest. Happy Joe's was a dominating force. And then, of course, in 2020, COVID hit. And at that point, Happy Joe gave his company... before that point, Happy Joe gave his company to his son. And then COVID hit, and it caused major financial damage to the company. And so Happy Joe, or not Happy Joe, but Joe's son sold the company to a conglomerate. And it's never going to be the same. Because they will eventually sacrifice quality, but not change their prices. And their prices are still exorbitantly high. For a large pizza from Happy Joe's, you are spending probably about $25.
Okay.
Now, there is some importance to why the pizza costs so much. And I'll go ahead and put that up on screen for everyone. Let's see. That's not the right one. This is the right one. So, Happy Joe's does not use pizza sauce. They don't use tomato sauce. They use tomato paste. And to get tomato paste, you have to cook down a bunch of tomatoes. To make today's pizza, I used half a jar of paste. Now, generally, when I make pizza sauce, I've got 1 can of Hunt's diced tomatoes and 1 can of Hunt's fire roasted tomatoes and garlic. And those get blended up and cooked down slightly and then jarred. That'll make about 2.5 jars of pizza sauce for me. And what I cooked down today was 5 cans of diced tomatoes. We're talking so much water loss in the cooking process. It was quite literally 1/2 of the volume of the original. And I only got 2 and maybe 3/4 of a jar. So 2 jars and 3/4 of a jar.
How long does it take to cook down all of that?
To do it in the oven can take anywhere from 3 to 7 hours, depending on how much you're cooking down. Give me 1 second here. Talk amongst yourselves.
All right. Never had a pizza made with tomato paste as the sauce before.
I haven't either.
I'm curious as to how that would affect the flavor. I have to inquire about that later. And while we're at it, just once again like to reinforce that Little Caesars is dog shit. It's the worst pizza chain.
I second that.
Yep.
Okay, well, just because it's the worst pizza chain doesn't mean it's the worst in metrics. Let's be honest here. We're talking about pan pizzas that have humongous numbers of carbs. If you are a sportsman of some type and you need to carbo load, don't do pasta. Do Little Caesars.
Well, wouldn't any pizza be just full of carbs?
Well, the crust is the carbs. And if you're using properly fermented dough, then it's actually going to be fewer carbs at the back end. Because carbs are starches and sugars. Right. And what yeast does is it breaks down starches and sugars and turns them into CO2 and alcohol. So the key to Happy Joe's Pizza is not only the paste, the tomato paste, but they don't just set the sauce in the middle. You look around the edges of that pizza, that's spread all the way out to the edge. They lay down a very generous amount of tomato paste and spread it all the way out evenly to the edge.
Interesting. So I'm curious, what does tomato paste do to the flavor profile of a pizza as opposed to tomato sauce?
It concentrates the flavor. The more cooked down a sauce is, the more concentrated the flavor. So with tomatoes, if you've seen tomato paste in the stores.
Yeah.
Well, that's just a highly concentrated tomato sauce. There's still water in it. That's how they get it to pack and smooth. Mm-hmm. There's also a little bit of oil. And most people use tomato paste. They don't use it as a paste. Oh, whoa. Nugget. Shush. They don't use it as a paste. What they'll do is they'll rehydrate it. They'll put water into it and thin it out. I'm sorry. There's a dog barking outside, and my youngest dog just barks at everything. So they
still puppy.
They spread the paste all the way out to the edges, and that's what gives it its signature. Because during the bake, you'll get charred bits of tomato paste, and there's something addictive about that flavor. Addictive about concentrated charred tomatoes. Something that you will not experience anywhere else in the world.
I'm gonna have to try that then. I do like things charred. I like tomatoes charred too.
Now you don't want the entire thing always charred all the time. But you do want specks of tomato chunks charred. And so over the past several years, I've learned about pizza. I've learned about making bread, making pizza dough, making pizza sauce, learning how to hand toss pizza dough, the different ways to make and mold doughs of all kinds. And I finally stumbled across some information a few weeks ago on Happy Joe's pizza dough. And that reinvigorated me to finally figuring out how to make Happy Joe's pizza at home. Because
Sorry?
No, go ahead.
Where did you come across this information?
Well, there was someone on a subreddit, asking about everyone's favorite pizzas, and I ran into another native Iowan that used to work at Happy Joe's in the late 2000s, before they changed their dough recipe. And he didn't know the exact measurements that they used because they were making dough in bulk, as they always do, but he knew the rough baker's percentages. And so I took a look at those percentages, and I started working out how to make a proper pizza dough at home, because the home oven is different than a normal, restaurant style oven.
That is true.
But my recipe is not too different from the original. I backed off on the fat a little bit because the last 2 times until today that I've made it, I've overcooked the crust. Mm-hmm. And I backed the heat down from 400 to 390. But other than that, the dough is pretty much the exact same. The key Go ahead.
Sorry, is there anything special about specifically the Happy Joe's dough as opposed to most pizza doughs?
Not specifically in the way that it's mixed, but there is a difference in the way that they make their pizza rounds. Mm-hmm. No other company makes their pizza rounds the way that Happy Joe's does. Have you ever seen a laminator? A dough laminator?
I have not seen a dough laminator before.
Okay, so do you know what dough...
I'm assuming it's not lamination in what I think of lamination is.
Well, do you know what lamination does in dough?
No, I only know what it does on paper.
Okay. Have you ever seen croissant dough made?
No.
Okay. So croissants, they use a process called lamination. You make a dough, and then you stretch out the dough, and you put down a butter square into the center of that dough, and you fold the rest of the dough over on top of that. And then you chill it, and then you start the process of lamination. And all this is folding the dough onto itself, and then spreading it out, and then doing it again and spreading it out. And in doing this, the butter that you've put into that dough creates layers of dough, butter, dough, butter, dough, butter. And the more layers you have, the more it's going to puff up.
Right.
It's another form of puff pastry. So pie doughs, those are a form of puff pastry, but they don't use layered butter. They just use butter in the recipe.
Yeah.
So laminators and sheeters are the exact same thing. Laminators are two rollers on a large machine, and you can set the height or the space difference between the two rollers, and then you push a bunch of dough through it. And so what Happy Joe's does is they sheet their dough through this large sheeter, and then instead of instead of hand tossing the dough, they cut out pizza rounds. They've got a size mold that they place down on top of the sheeted dough, and they cut it out. And then they place it on a piece of oiled parchment paper, and they take it to the topping station. And from there, it gets topped, thrown in a 400-degree oven for anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes, depending on the type of pizza, blah, blah. And then it comes out. And it's the experience to have in the northern Midwest. Like I said, it's a staple. You're never going to find a pizza process like theirs anywhere else.
All right.
So what I've done is I don't have a sheeter, but I have a rolling pin. And so I can get very, very close to a perfect 14-inch round. Close. Not completely perfect, but close. And by doing that, you can have homemade Happy Joe's pizza. And besides how far out the crust ratio is, I mean, this does not look exactly like this. But that was only because I was finally getting to the point to test the paste the way that it needs to be. Next week, my pizza will look like this. But this pizza tastes the exact same to how it was in the 90s with Happy Joe's. You got the crusty bits on the edge. You've got blocks of, tomato paste. You've got charred bits around the crust. There is no experience better.
Keep that in mind. I might have to make that myself someday soon.
What I'll do if you come to Iowa is I will order one pepperoni Happy Joe's pizza, and I will make one pepperoni Happy Joe's pizza, and we will see what you like. Now, originally, the sauce from Happy Joe's was bitter. Because they didn't really add stuff to their sauce. It was quite literally just cooked down tomatoes. And the sauce did change in the mid-2000s. They started adding sugars and cornstarch simply because they were expanding so much, they had to mass produce and preserve. So they added stuff into their tomato paste.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not accurate to the mid to late 2000s and on when it comes to flavor profile, but it is accurate to the original recipe. Personally, I don't like sweet pizza sauces. They make me feel like crap.
I don't think I've ever had a bitter pizza sauce before. But
It's because
I'm
almost
curious.
everyone uses a little bit of sugar in their sauce.
So I will have to say, I would happily accept that offer to test the pizzas, though I'm about to offend a lot of pizza fans out here. But I would ask that it be a different pizza than the pepperoni pizza, as I do not like pepperoni on pizza.
Sausage?
That works. It's just for
Y-
some reason I feel pepperoni has a weird aftertaste to it, and I just never
It's
understood its
it's a
appeal.
metallic taste, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's because of the curing process.
Mm.
And it's not the pepperoni, it's the casing.
Oh,
The casing that they use to cure the pepperoni, it's covered in a safe mold and then stored away. And so you come out with a little bit of that mold flavor, and that flavor is a very tin-like flavor. I've always enjoyed it. But yeah, pepperoni is just sausage that has been cured and spices have been added.
yeah. Didn't know it was just basically sausage.
Yeah,
But it
it's
makes
it's
sense.
quite literally just sausage.
Hmm.
Sausage with some spicy spices,
All right.
ground down, cased, and then cured.
Hmm. Awesome. Um, do you know if any of them, if it's possible to make it with a different casing that doesn't have that sort of aftertaste to it?
Yeah, if you don't cure it.
Oh. Is there such a thing as non-cured pepperoni, or is the
Yeah,
definition of pepperoni that it needs to be
yeah,
cured?
sure. No, you can use uncured pepperoni.
Hmm.
And in fact, a lot of people are getting into uncured sausage these days. But there's a reason for curing meat.
All right. It's safer.
It protects against botulism.
Yeah. And that is one thing you don't want to get is botulism.
There was a huge epidemic back in the early 1900s where sausage killed people because of botulism.
Yeah.
And then they learned how to cure sausage, and the death rates went down significantly.
That makes sense.
But we've been curing meats for millennia.
Yep.
I mean, summer sausage is the original cured sausage. It's
Summer
called
sausage.
summer. It's called summer sausage for a reason. You're supposed to be able to leave it out of the fridge and eat it anytime you want.
Is that actually safe?
Yes. If you have cured summer sausage.
Oh, right.
The summer sausage that you buy at these big box stores, they are not going to give you cured summer sausage. Mostly because they expect that you're going to treat your summer sausage the same way that you treat the rest of your sausage.
Right.
Hey man, I'm not the sausage holder.
Coda here is laughing because of the comments about sausage.
Apparently, there's a special way to handle your special sausage in different seasons.
She says apparently there's special ways to handle your sausage during different seasons. Obviously, she's using innuendos.
Yes. Of course.
But she ain't the only one.
Yeah, I know, Stoner. You've got a dirty mind. We all do.
Hey, I do not have a dirty mind. I call it a sexy imagination.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So, I was talking about the sauce. This was the breakthrough that I made last week. Like, at the beginning of this week, I finally figured out why I couldn't get the charred ends on my pizza crust. And it's because I wasn't using a tomato paste. I found a video online from an early 2000s that was recorded in the early 2000s at a at a Happy Joe's pizza parlor down in St. Louis. There was no talking. It was just the creation of a bunch of their specialty pizzas from start to finish. From pulling out the dough, to sheeting it, to cutting it out, to topping it, throwing it in the oven, pulling it out, cutting it, and serving it. And I paid very close attention to their segmented pizza, where half of it was meat lovers, half of it was sausage, or a quarter of it was meat lovers, a quarter of it was sausage, a quarter of it was pepperoni, and a quarter of it was sausage and Canadian bacon, which I think is a ridiculous thing to call ham.
Agreed.
It's just fucking formed ham.
Yep.
Um,
It's because ham is worse than bacon, right? Just adding the suffix Canadian to something just makes it worse. So there you have roast bacon. Yes, I am a self-hating Canadian.
So I take a look at this video, and I'm paying very close attention to this specific pizza. And I see that they're spreading it out with a fucking spatula. And I'm like, I've never seen pizza sauce spread out with a spatula. It's always a ladle, and it's always very watery. This looks thick, and a light bulb goes off in my head, and I'm like, oh, it's a fucking paste. And so, on Thursday, in preparation for today, I bought a crap ton of diced tomatoes. And there is some sort of background noise. Hold on one sec.
Alright. So while she's figuring that out, what are your favorite pizza toppings, Stoner?
It really just depends on what I'm in the mood for. I kind of like a combination of different kinds of meats and veggies.
I seem to have some sort of issue on on my microphone. I'm not sure exactly what it is. Doesn't seem to be affecting the stream too much since it's down in the low decibel limit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, personally, I have not noticed it.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. So today I cooked down 5 cans of diced tomatoes, and it was well over 100 ounces of diced tomatoes. Out of that, I got just under 3 jars of tomato paste. Now,
When you say
if
ounces, are you talking about fluid ounces or weight ounces?
weight ounces.
All right. I'm trying to convert it from freedom units to metric. Wow, but that's a lot of.
Really,
that is
he
a lot of
uses the
tomatoes.
proper term.
Indeed. Personally, I think I prefer. Yeah, I prefer to use the term freedom units as opposed to imperial.
Don't you mean standard?
No, they're freedom units.
Yeah. That terminology should have disappeared when they kicked the British out.
Yeah.
Fucking mindless.
So when it comes to this, I got probably about 50 ounces of sauce. Now, mind you, 4 of those 5 cans were 28 ounces of diced tomatoes, and then one of them was 14.5 ounces.
It's a lot of tomatoes.
It's a lot of tomatoes.
Somewhere, someplace, an Italian is gesticulating in agreement.
Well, and somewhere in the world there's an Italian that's pissed off that I'm using paste instead of sauce.
Well, that Italian can go pound sand. We're in America, not Italy. Things evolve. Get over it.
Yes, well, pizza is not one size fits all.
No, it is not.
And that's what I love about pizza, and I've loved about my journey in learning about making different pizzas. There's different sauces for all types of pizza, and this one is close to my heart.
The one thing we will not put on pizza is a fucking mayonnaise and salmon with peas.
No.
We're not fucking doing that, people.
Yeah, no, we are not putting mayonnaise and salmon and peas on a pizza. Yeah, that's not pizza.
Someone needs to go to jail over that.
Yes, well, I think someone needs to go to jail over Caesar salad pizza.
Hey, I
agree as well.
respectful about making sure there's not
Y'all want
quality
to see
pizza.
some?
I
Y'all
said
want
I
to see some
wanted
weird
try
pizzas?
monstrosity.
Look
You
at what
said
Domino's
yes.
Japan does for pizza.
Hypocrisy, thy name is Trap Erica.
Okay, so Coda is yelling at me in the background because I called it pizza, and she was very specific when she asked me to make it to not call it pizza because she knows how I feel about it.
It's not a pizza.
She knows it's not a pizza because it doesn't have a base sauce.
Not only just that, but what fucker puts
Caesar salad on a
lettuce
layer of bread.
on a
That's
pizza?
all.
Coda, if you are asking what fucker puts lettuce on a pizza, Happy Joe's has taco pizza.
That's just a little
No.
garnish.
Did he fucking
put a whole salad
They
on there?
they put a shitload of shredded lettuce
Yo,
on it.
garnish for a taste
I
and a
don't- I
flavor.
think
Yeah,
it's even
put
worse
it on there to where it can fucking be a rabbit. Nah,
Caesar pizza, because
nah.
it's not just lettuce; it's fucking romaine lettuce. I assume the lettuce they use on Happy Joe's is like a normal lettuce, like iceberg or something.
Yes, it is iceberg lettuce, and
It's
you can
originally
see
that.
right there, that is a lot of fucking lettuce.
Too much.
Yeah.
But
What are those? What are those things that are? I see lettuce, tomato, and some yellowish thing. What is that?
yes, um, those are Doritos taco chips.
What? On pizza?
Yes, and in fact, the reason why Doritos was a big thing before the 90s was because of Happy Joe's.
And then Taco Bell jumped in on it.
Well, Taco Bell jumped in on it because Taco Bell it is owned by the same company that makes Doritos.
They didn't have the cross production freaking rights though.
I know. Well, no, they did. They just didn't actually make cross production until they had someone with a creative mind come into the company chair position. That's a story for another time.
Yeah.
But Happy Joe's has always used Doritos taco chips for their taco pizza.
What is the world coming to?
Nothing. My mother loved Happy Joe's taco pizza. Now, it starts out the exact same way as any normal pizza does. You've got your dough, you've got your tomato sauce, you've got your cheese spread out almost all the way to the end of the crust. You bake it, and then you pull it out, and then goes on lettuce, tomatoes, and the taco chips.
Well, at least they're not baking the lettuce.
No, they're not baking lettuce. They are not heathens.
Reminds me of specifically egregious episode of Kitchen Nightmares I watched once. For some reason, some absolute lunatic thought it would be a smart idea to grill lettuce.
So Taco John's has had a lot of specialty pizzas that most companies never really picked up on. They've got a Philly cheesesteak pizza where instead of the tomato sauce, you're putting on Cheese Whiz.
Why?
Because you need a base sauce and tomatoes don't go with Philly cheesesteak.
But Cheese Whiz?
Yeah, well, we're not talking like the stuff in the can. We're talking more like the consistency of nacho cheese.
Fair enough. So they're not just using like actual Cheese Whiz cheese.
Yeah, it's not the cheese in a can.
It's like a cheese sauce.
Yeah, it's a spreadable cheese.
That's fair. I actually wouldn't mind trying that. I do like cheese.
So what they'll do is they'll spread out the cheese sauce. They'll throw down steak, and then they'll top with more cheese. And probably probably something like a provolone.
Is this something they've been doing for a while, or is this relatively new?
What, the Philly cheesesteak?
Yeah, the Philly cheesesteak pizza.
No, they've been doing it for a long time. For as long as I've been paying any attention to Happy Joe's, they've had a lot of these specialty pizzas.
Fair enough. Because I was gonna say, I recently had noticed that Domino's had added a Philly cheesesteak pizza. So I guess they're finally catching up to Happy Joe's. They're ripping off their cheesesteak pizza. Actually, I'm gonna take a look and see if they also stole the idea of the cheese sauce too.
Okay, so apparently we have a viewer from one of Coda's servers. His name is Astral, so let's all give him a warm welcome.
That is my
Hello,
Star
our
child.
one viewer.
I white woman adopted.
Hi, Astral. Thanks for tuning in.
Apparently Coda has white woman adopted him.
Oh, that's sweet.
I love him.
Okay, so this was the paste that got made this morning, and it took 6 hours from start to finish. But you can see the crust on the roasting pan at the top. I quite literally had the sauce, or I had it filled all the way to the top. And that's all it's left. Happy Joe's just... And then, of course, the way that they cut their pizzas is unlike anyone else. Everyone else, they'll cut down the center, and then they'll cut down another center, and then they'll divide those 4 pieces and turn it into 8. Whereas Happy Joe's doesn't cut their pizza that way. They pick a spot, cut down the center, slightly angle the cutter, cut, angle it more, cut, angle it more, cut, angle it more, cut.
Whoever knew that freaking Happy Joe's cut the emo.
So how many slices do they tend to end up with?
For a 14-inch pizza, anywhere between 8 and 12 pieces. Depends on who's cutting.
So they'll tend to be more thinner slices as opposed to normal slices. But
Yeah, so you take a look at this, or their taco pizza in a box, thin slices. But then you take a look at this one and you see a thin slice and then a thick slice.
Like your dating profile. Thick, thin, can't decide.
So it looks like sometimes taco pizza from Happy Joe's also comes with black olives and onions.
Interesting. Black olives are an interesting choice for a pizza. Better than green olives?
Yes.
Oh, so I asked Stoner this while you were away. Might as well ask you this now. What are your go-to pizza toppings?
Pepperoni and sausage.
So just meat, no vegetables or other such monstrosities.
No, because meat is life.
True.
And I hear Coda typing furiously in the background.
What are her go-to
If I
pizza
can
toppings?
use my voice, then that'll be good.
She actually prefers a chicken bacon ranch pizza, so
Or chicken bacon artichoke.
or chicken bacon artichoke. Her chicken bacon ranch pizza has a base of her homemade ranch, topped with my mix of cheeses, chicken, bacon, and black olives. What else do you normally have?
Chicken, bacon, black olives. That's about it.
Yeah,
I season it too.
chicken, bacon, and black olives.
Ruby, come on.
If she goes for a traditional pizza, it's either meat trio or pepperoni lovers.
Like the fucking type of pepperoni where they see just an entire fucking flat grill of pepperoni.
If she gets pepperoni lovers, it has to be so completely covered that even after the cheese is spread out, you can't see the cheese.
Nope.
So pepperoni lovers is kind of like pepperoni, just with a lot of extra pepperoni.
Yes, it's like it's like adding 4 extra layers of pepperoni.
Dang.
That would generally be considered a heart attack on a pizza, but people like it.
The pizza that has 1 pound of pepperoni on top of it. That one.
Dang. It's a lot of pepperoni.
So I'm going to go ahead and read through this for everyone, because this will be released tonight. Not in the morning, but tonight before I go to bed. I was going to wait until midnight, but I'm not going to stay up that late. And because I can't schedule an article release, it's going to go up tonight. So there's actually 2 articles that I've written. They're more so recipes. One's for the sauce, and one is for the pizza after you've made the sauce. So I'll go ahead and start with the sauce. I found the secret. It's not a sauce. It's a very simplistic tomato paste, not a sauce. I kept trying to figure out why I couldn't get the perfect crusted red on the crust of the pizza. Happy Joe's is known for spreading their sauce all the way to the edge of the crust. It leaves crispy bits of tomato almost burnt. I've been ranting about Happy Joe's for way too long, so how about I get down to this? You're going to need a roasting pan, 2 28-ounce cans of Hunt's diced tomatoes, 2 28-ounce cans of Rotel mild diced tomatoes and green chilies, and 1 14.5-ounce can of Hunt's garlic fire roasted diced tomatoes. That just added a little bit of extra flavor that just puts my tomato sauce slightly over the original. Obviously, some homemakers and scratch food makers would rather use tomatoes from their garden, and that's more than acceptable. You don't have to use canned tomatoes. I do, because I don't have a garden. The process is fairly simple. You're looking to cook down the tomatoes to approximately 40 to 50% of the initial volume, which means cooking off the majority of the water. So the first thing you're going to do is blend down the tomatoes into an initial sauce. This doesn't change whether you're using canned tomatoes or fresh. You always start the cooking process blended. Before you start blending, go ahead and set your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. And once it's reached temp and the tomatoes are blended and in the roasting pan, go ahead and throw them in the oven. This is not an uninvolved process, though. Unlike most of my other recipes, you have to constantly check the sauce, since the top of the sauce will reduce faster than the rest, and you don't want the water in the sauce to spurt over while in the oven. You check the sauce every 15 to 20 minutes. Make sure to stir it gently so that separated water will mix in with the dry parts. And you're going to do that for approximately 3 to 5 hours. You may have to go longer, as I did today. If you notice that the sauce is starting to burn, immediately drop the temp down to 200 degrees Fahrenheit and continue with the 15 to 20 minute checks and stirs. Now, the reason why you drop down to 200 degrees Fahrenheit is because it's above boiling, or above the evaporation point. But that's generally the temperature that almost everything is dehydrated at, is 200, like 180 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit is the dehydration zone. When you finish and reach the target volume, pull the roasting pan out of the oven and place the pan on a wire rack to allow for even cooling. Now, the initial product may still be a bit chunky. If you like it that way, you can. You can simply blend. But I'd recommend adding some olive oil to the mix in order to make it as smooth as possible.
So you reduce it in the oven as opposed... Generally, when I think of reducing sauces, I think of just doing it in like a pan over on the stove. But you put it in the oven.
When you're doing it en masse, you don't want to have to constantly be standing over the saucepan. And so, if you're going to do it on the stove, it's not just... every 15 to 20 minutes, check on it, stir it. On the stove, it's every few minutes, get up and stir it. And so, once you're finished cooling and blending, go ahead and place your sauce in whatever container you wish and store it in a cool area. You can even freeze it to extend its life. There is still water in this sauce, or in this paste. It's just not nearly as much as it was before. From there, we move over to the actual pizza. So, as I said last week, and in the sauce recipe, Happy Joe's is a staple in Iowa. It was started in Davenport by Lawrence Joseph Happy Joe Whitty. The dude overcame so much as a kid and found his calling in collecting food service skills as an adult. One sec. Okay. Found his calling in collecting food service skills as an adult, eventually starting a successful restaurant called Happy Joe's. Spread throughout the northern Midwest and used to be a common party venue. Hell, my graduation party was at Happy Joe's. So when I say this is close to my heart and that I've painstakingly researched their pizza in order to come up with a recipe so you can make it at home, it's true. Understand, this will not be one for one. It's not going to be exactly like Happy Joe's, but it is a close facsimile, if not better. There are two parts to this pizza that make it what it is. The most important part of any pizza is the dough. If the dough isn't perfect, the pizza isn't perfect. So our target for this is a low hydration and higher fat content dough. Before we make the dough, we need to get our ingredients and tools together. And I always use a stand mixer. If you don't have one, you can use a dough whisk and your hands to knead the dough. You're at least going to need a kitchen scale and a mixing bowl. So this is the ingredient list for the pizza dough. Now, this is modified for a home oven to be baked on the top rack with a pizza steel. And this is one pizza. You can scale this as you want. You can even modify measurements, because not only does it have the weight, but it also has the baker's percentages. So you start out with 300 grams of bread flour, 9 grams of sugar, 6 grams of non-iodized salt, 3 grams of baker's yeast, 45 grams of vegetable oil, and 159 grams of distilled or filtered water. I've included the weights. I've also included the baker's percentages so that you can easily scale for size. These measurements are for a 14-inch pizza round, so scale to whatever size you wish, or scale for multiples. Regardless, 14 inches is about the size of a large Happy Joe's pizza, so it's going to be a fairly good approximation. All of the dry ingredients go in first, then you add the oil and water. And ideally, you gradually add the wet ingredients while mixing. The name of the game is dry because instead of hand tossing the dough, you're going to roll the dough out with a rolling pin. Before you do that, the dough needs to ferment and rise. And to do this, you put it in a dark and warm area, someplace that gives the yeast a chance to get as active as possible, and we let it sit there for an hour. Now, Dale, you've made a few of my bread recipes, right?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And each time you do, you start out the fermentation in a warm, dark environment.
Yes.
And how do those come out?
They come out pretty well. I've had no complaints. To be fair, I haven't really had much, like, being that I had never made dough beforehand, I don't really have a thing to compare to. So,
well,
but I've had no complaints.
So which recipes have you used thus far?
Let's see. I have used one of your pizza recipes. Not this one, of course, because this one is new. I've used the other one that you sent me.
That would be the personal pan pizza.
Yeah, I've also used the bread roll one, like the one you make for sandwiches.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Was that the brioche one?
I don't think I made the brioche one yet. That's
Okay.
the one that has a lot of butter, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I have yet to make that one just because I have yet to dedicate that much butter to something.
Yeah, that's a lot of butter. That's expensive.
And also, I'm currently trying to cut down on weight, and tons of butter would probably not be that helpful for that purpose.
Actually, butter is going to be healthier than all of the carbs. And if you learn sourdough, it'll be even healthier.
Right. Keep that in mind.
So once that hour is up, you pull the dough out, and you flip the dough out onto the counter, stretch it out, and form a new dough ball. And you replace the ball into the bowl and keep it covered. You're going for 2 to 4 more hours. And the reason why you flip it out and create a new dough ball is because you're trying to get the dough so that the yeast gets into all of the parts of the dough.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that it's evenly fermented throughout. You don't just want pockets of CO2 at the top layer of the dough, because then you're going to end up with nothing but a brick of flour and one huge air pocket. So what that does is a similar process to lamination. You stretch out the dough and you fold it in on itself, roll it into a round, and put it back in the bowl. Once that 2 to 4 hour time is up, you're going to get started on rolling out the dough. But before you do, you make sure that your pizza steel is on the top rack of the oven, and you set the oven to 390 to 400 degrees Fahrenheit.
Hey, baby, I've got to start yelling at my friends here shortly.
Okay, hold on. Okay, so once you've set the oven, dust the counter with some flour, preferably all-purpose flour, and then you scoop the dough out onto it with the top side down. Then you dust the exposed side of the dough with flour as well. It's going to take a little bit to get the dough rolled out to a 14-inch round. The key is to roll it out until it stops letting you roll it out. Once it starts bouncing back from its limit, you just let it sit there for about 5 minutes. You don't have to just keep rolling it. I see a lot of people make that mistake, and you don't have to. Don't put in more effort than you need to. It'll likely take 3 or 4 times to roll out the dough in order to get to a 14-inch round. But that's fine, because you're only putting in like 30 seconds each time. And as you can see in the pictures, it goes from a very small round to about 14 inches. This was actually about 15 inches, which isn't bad.
Yeah.
Once you're done rolling it out, you're going to dock the dough. And for anyone who doesn't know what docking is, you can either buy a dough docker from Amazon, or you can pull out a fork. And what you do is you poke holes in the dough. That's going to make it so that it doesn't blow up. It doesn't balloon while it's in the oven. Because while small ballooned charred areas are nice, if you don't dock it, you could get a massive balloon area, especially with this type of dough, and it's going to shift all of the toppings. Once you have a 14-inch round, you'll need to dock the dough and then place the round on an oiled piece of parchment paper, docked side down. From there, you'll add the sauce, the cheese, and the toppings. Make sure the sauce is evenly spread on the round all the way to the edges. Now, my cheese mix is 3/5 mozzarella, 2/5 mild cheddar. I know it looks messy in this form, but this is literally the way the pizza is supposed to be made. At this point, your oven should be preheated to the temp you chose. With a pizza peel, launch the pizza onto your pizza steel. And make sure you're careful enough to keep the pizza on the parchment paper. Leave it in the oven for 15 to 18 minutes. When it's finished, you should end up with a pizza that is extremely similar to Happy Joe's. And that's what we have here. All that remains at that point is to cut, serve, and enjoy. Now, I know that these recipes take a long time, but I have made almost everything that I make as uninvolved as you can humanly make them. I mean, 15 to 20 minutes before gently stirring a sauce. 30 seconds of working a dough. The most time-consuming part of this pizza is putting the toppings on. Everything else is something you can leave unattended for a long period of time. I mean, rolling out the dough, that takes 30 seconds per cycle. So you spend a total of 1.5 minutes rolling out the dough. If you get efficient at making breads, you spend less than 2 minutes putting all of the ingredients in the mixing bowl, putting it on the mixer, and then letting it mix and do its thing. If you're efficient in making bread, again, you're not going to spend much more than a minute of working the dough when you're doing that lamination process to make sure that, you know, to form the second dough ball. But it takes 3 to 5 minutes to top the pizza. One sec.
Have you ever had a pan pizza, Stoner? Or do you tend to go with the more traditional style of pizzas?
I prefer anything that doesn't have a crispy crust.
Oh, you're a fucking... Come
Go
on,
ahead,
Stoner.
finish that sentence.
You're a pansy.
Personally, I don't really care what type of crust the pizza has.
But then again,
because I don't eat the crust.
the thin crust I'm used to is what Pizza Hut had, and that kind of ruined me on thin crust.
Well, Pizza Hut had pan pizza.
Yeah.
Now, pan pizza, look, just as long as it's not thin crust.
You don't like the thin
Okay.
crust, like New York style pizza?
No.
No, he's probably talking more like store-bought thin crust pizzas.
Yeah, I hate those.
Fair enough. Most store-bought pizza's pretty terrible.
Well, those thin crusts are more so home. They've found a home in California. Thin crust pizza
in California.
Yeah, thin crust pizza is really more of a health nut thing.
Reason number 1,362 to build a wall around California.
No, we're just gonna drop a nuke in the fault line and let Los Angeles and San Francisco and San Diego float out into the ocean.
Pave the place with nukes.
What we need to do
Just
is we
pave it with nukes.
need to accelerate the global warming so that California finally sinks into the sea where it belongs.
But see, melting the ice caps is not going to make the sea level rise.
Bad.
How do you figure
Then
that?
we could be done with places like California and New York, and you just let them sink.
What we need is a new ice age.
True.
I was thinking to say, are we sure we want to pollute the oceans with the trash in them cities?
True. The fish would all be dying of fentanyl poisoning.
Yeah, think of the sharks and fish and sea turtles and
They'll live.
mermaid puppies.
Nature will correct. Nature will refreeze. It'll start a new new ice age sooner than normal, and it will flood all of California.
Okay, side tangent. How familiar are y'all with history?
Fairly. Depends of where and when.
You remember how around the World War II era, when the Cold War started kicking off, how global cooling was the big doomsday issue?
Mm-hmm.
And then it went to global warming as the big doomsday issue.
Well,
Even made a whole cartoon series about it called Captain Planet and all that other horse hockey. And
no,
now
see that
it's climate change just to cover everything.
see
Unusually cold winter, climate change. Unusually hot summer, climate change.
Mild winter and mild summer, climate change.
Hold up. Shut up.
Weather. It's been going on ever since God spit this planet into the solar system.
When it comes down to the change from global cooling to global warming, it did not go straight from global cooling to global warming. So it was global cooling, and then it was the hole in the ozone layer, and then it was global warming, and then it became climate change.
Jeez, when I was a kid in the 90s, the ozone hole was still a thing.
And now they're trying to change it to the climate emergency and the climate catastrophe, because climate change isn't scary sounding enough to destroy the world's economy.
Because climate fucking changes.
Yeah.
It's all just a scam by the New World Order to get more tax money out of us.
Basically, yes.
And to control us and put us in the pods and make us eat the bugs and own nothing and be happy. It's all just another friggin' government scam.
This is actually something that someone was talking about in a Twitter Spaces this morning, and everyone was just ranting about government policy, and I'm like, I don't want to talk about government policy. It's pointless because you're not going to fix the government. It's got to be nuked. We got to start over. But in the meantime, if you want to improve lives, focus on the electrical grid. Focus on improving infrastructure. We could actually make the U.S. electrical grid much more efficient and support everyone having an EV without adding more power plants.
And even still, those electric vehicles, guess what? They're coal powered.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to dispute that.
People buying EVs are like, I don't see no pollution. Out of sight, out of mind.
We shouldn't be focusing on getting rid of these power plants. We should be focusing on making them more energy efficient. And the way we do that is through graphene. Carbon nanotubes.
I didn't know Ian entered this podcast.
Shut the fuck up. I've been talking about graphene since long before Timcast ever started.
Oh, dude, tell us how you really feel about Timcast, please.
I would nuke that show so fucking hard. I would be just to be a fucking contrarian, I would disagree with Tim on everything.
Well, if you're curious as to my opinion of the show, were you asking about my opinion or our opinion of the show or of Tim? Because there are two different things.
Yes.
Yes to both.
Fair enough, because as I've often said, Tim is by far the least interesting thing of his show. So depending on who the guest is, the show can either be good or bad or just boring. But Tim doesn't really add. Tim neither adds nor detracts anything from it. He's just there. And
Well,
talking about
speaking of his show, did you see where he recently had on the human mayonnaise sandwich?
Which one?
AKA. Oh, that would be, what's that peckerhead's name? The one
Matt
on the
Walsh?
Daily Wire that's not.
Matt Walsh?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I saw that I saw that he had him on as a guest recently. Didn't see the episode.
Haven't seen the show, don't want to see the show, but just knowing that he was on there is enough to make me not want to watch it.
Listen, when you start having people on your show that also appear on shows like whatever on the Whatever podcast, on Fresh and Fit, or is it Fit and Fresh? I don't fucking know.
Fresh and Fit.
But when you have people on that have appeared on those shows, I don't fucking want to watch your show ever again.
Even if they then have interesting people on?
Even if they have interesting people on, I don't want to watch your show anymore because the simple fact is you are lowering your standards and bringing on clickbait. I don't like clickbait, which is part of the reason why I stopped watching Philip DeFranco. I used to be a huge fan. Up until early 2021, I liked his news videos every day. I watched them religiously. And then 2021 happened, and I couldn't watch him anymore because I was always down in the dumps. Watching these people's shows just gives me no hope for the future. And it's like I was talking about with Stoner yesterday and earlier today.
Right.
You cannot let yourself get blackpilled. It's a very bad place to go. It's a very deep hole, and it's extremely difficult to dig yourself out of.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all Tim's show is. It's black pill. It's talking about the shit. And it doesn't give any upsides for the future because everyone already knows you're not going to fix the shit that's going on. You got to blow it up. You got to start over.
I was fixing to say, yeah, Tim likes to fuss about everything, but I've never once heard him come up with a solution.
Yeah. Well, it depends when it comes to the black pill. Like, for example, any episode he has Michael Malice on, there are going to be no black pills in those episodes. And he has
Yeah,
him
well,
on quite a bit.
and that's the point. How often does he have Michael Malice on versus all of the other people he's had on?
Well, I mean,
They only had black people on there just a handful of time.
Yeah, well, as amount of time as compared to every other guest, I'd say he's had him on he's one of the most frequent guests. But I mean, compared to, if you're asking out of all of the shows, then not many times. But if you're just asking compared to other guests, it's one of the most recurring guests.
I'm talking about versus all of the shows. When it comes down to it, yes, I understand you're not really going to have any black pills because Michael Malice is a fucking anarchist and he already knows all of this shit. You cannot fix the government. You need to blow it up and start over. And I don't mean actually physically blow it up.
We're talking metaphorically here, boys.
Yeah.
We're not being literal, Fed boys. We're just being metaphorical and talking in Minecraft.
Yes.
But you've got to blow it up. You got to start over from the beginning.
Yes.
Now, generally, you don't actually have to start over from the beginning. You got to start over from where everything went off track and continued to go off track. So for us, it's probably right after the Civil War.
Yeah.
But
Definitely.
there are aspects of the evolution of this country that are so fundamental that we need to keep if we do blow this up and start over. Because there have been waxes and wanings of periods where people are collectivist and then people are individualistic.
And now we're in the collectivistic era.
Yes.
Another collectivistic era. So
Solution, I recommend we go back in time and shoot Lincoln again.
That really wouldn't have solved the problem because somebody else would have rose up and took his place.
Potentially.
I think a good point in time to start over from is the forming of the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, pre-1913.
Here's one for you. First thing I would do is I would go back to whenever they were writing the first 10 amendments and tell them to be more precise in their wording and make it to where a 5-year-old illiterate kid could understand it.
But see, they did. For the time that they were living in, that was very, very precise language. And it was extremely succinct.
Yes.
I mean, we've talked about my constant posts about the Second Amendment.
Yes.
Who is the militia?
The people.
Who is the state? No. In the Second Amendment, who is the state?
The people also?
The people. They are just segmented groups of people.
Yeah, that was back before the federal government became the overarching hegemon that it is today.
Yeah. The state could refer either to a state government, but it was very rare for it to refer to a state government. It quite literally referred to a larger community. It didn't refer to government, it referred to a community. So, in all of this, you have your two segmented groups in the first clause, and then you have your unsegmented group in the second clause, the people. So, a segmented group of people being necessary to secure or to let me work through this. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So,
Got a spicy 2A meme for this.
yeah, I'm sure you do. Almost everyone's got a Spike meme for this.
Said spicy.
Oh, spicy. Thought you were talking about Spike Cohen.
Oh.
Let's see. Okay, I'm going to ignore the first one. Only the government should have guns. A real Indian would know better.
For those of us just listening, the person saying the first line is Elizabeth Warren. Pocahontas.
And it's a real Native American. Where was I? Because I don't
We got
fucking
off into
remember.
the weeds again.
Yes, we did. I don't know how we got from Happy Joe's to government, but we fucking did.
I blame Sleepy Joe for that.
So, a well-regulated militia, a well-regulated, segmented group of the people,
And
being
it's
necessary.
at the time, well regulated meant well supplied.
Well-supplied and well-trained.
Yes.
Being necessary to the security of a free state. Being necessary to the security of another segmented group of the people. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The right of the people to keep, purchase, and carry firearms and other weapons of war shall not be infringed. Everyone wants to talk about, oh, well, you don't need an AR-15 to hunt. The AR-15 is not about, the Second Amendment is not about hunting. It's about waging fucking war.
Yes.
You need
On the
well,
government if necessary.
yes, with the government if necessary. You need a well-regulated militia, a highly trained, well-supplied militia. And because you need that militia to secure your community against an oppressive government, the right of the people to keep and carry any bearable weapon of war shall not be infringed. Which means I should be able to have my M249 Golf. I should be able to have my M240 Bravo. I should be able to have thousands upon thousands of rounds of 7.62 by 51.
Hey, Erica.
What?
Maybe you know the answer to this question.
Don't come at me with that 39 bullshit.
No. No, it's a question Molly asked me the other day. And
Yes.
I didn't have an answer for her, and I think you might. Why did the military replace the M60 with something else that still shoots 7.62 NATO?
Probably because it was a more updated weapon system. Slightly lighter in weight.
Problems with that specific round?
You're talking about the 240 Bravo?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so it had better manufacturing specs than the M60, which means you could actually have a longer cyclical firing cycle than you could on the M60. The barrel would last longer. So would the bolt.
You know, if you think about it, the M60 is basically an Americanized MG3.
Yes.
And the MG3 is basically an MG42 rechambered for 7.62 by 51.
Again, yes. But the important part is, you know, after we fought World War II, we saw the need to update weapons. We made some bad fucking calls. The M14.
Oh, you mean that the American military decided to modernize? Oh man, I am so friggin' shocked. Shocked, I tell you.
We were supposed to modernize, and then generals decided, oh, well, this is modern enough, referring to the M14. The M14 wasn't modernized. The M14 was just a smaller version of the M1.
Basically, all an M14 is just a rechambered Garand that takes a detachable box magazine instead of an end block clip.
And a smaller round.
Yeah, slightly smaller round.
Yeah. So that's not modernizing. That's just rechambering the same old shit. Whereas the M16 was the M16 was modernizing. Now listen, the M1 was not a turd.
You get what I'm saying? Compared to the M16.
Even compared to the M16, it was not a turd. It had deficiencies compared to the M16, but for its time, you know, it was a very good weapon. Whereas the M14 was never a good weapon, even for its time.
Well, considering the first batches of M16s that were released, yeah, the M14 was the better weapon.
No. It had the same problems. It would get jammed up. It would not work for jungle warfare. The bolts kept getting gummed up. It was not a worthy weapon.
Same thing happened to the original M16s before they got their chrome lined barrels.
Yes, I completely understand that. The difference being is they were truly lighter. They were polymerized.
You're right.
Instead
after they finally got all the bugs worked out, and after that weapon system's malfunction killed who knows how many American GIs, it finally became a decent weapon.
Yes, but because of its potential, something that the M14 never did have and never would have, it should have won out to begin with, but it didn't. The M14 was a piece of shit and never would be anything else. The M16 may have...
What the military should have done, instead of adopting the M14, they should have adopted the AR-10 in its place.
Well, there's...
If they were so gung-ho on the 7.62 NATO cartridge, then they at least should have adopted a relatively modern weapon for that era.
When you're talking about service rifles and modernization, we needed to go to the 5.56 round. It was
wasn't around back then.
It became around in the early 50s.
Hold on. I got Google pulled up. Let
It
me
was
do some research.
it was standardized by NATO, and during the trials, they were requiring everyone to move to 5.56 for their infantry rifle offerings.
When was the hold on. Dang it. Try again. When was the 5.56 NATO cartridge developed?
I believe it was the early to mid 50s.
Hold on. It's asking Google. Let me type it in. Was 5.56 cartridge. CARTR. It was developed in 1967. Wait, hold up. Okay, you stupid thing. Start working. Developed in Belgium. In the late 70s.
The military 5.56 by 45 round was developed from the older 222 Remington in the late 1950s by Eugene Stoner.
Yeah, I see it right now. I'm on weaponsystems.net. So it wasn't the early 50s, it was the late 50s.
Yeah,
The
so
early 50s is when the 7.62 NATO was developed, and it was in competition. It was in competition with the 280 British, which
Yeah.
I believe should have been adopted instead of the 7.62.
but see the whole reason the 5.56 was developed to begin with was because of the Korean War and World War II.
Developed. Yep. It was developed in the late 50s and entered service in the mid 60s.
Yeah, we needed a round that was an intermediate cartridge where infantrymen could carry more of it and it would be effective in wartime. And so the 5.56 is by that standard is a reasonable cartridge for infantrymen. Now 7.62, that needed to be kept in the open bolt family because 7.62 is a much higher pressure, which means it's going to create a lot more heat. And the only way to keep from overheating a barrel is to have an open bolt system.
Also gotta love how like a lot of early submachine guns had open bolts on them.
Yeah. But see, that's the whole thing about infantry. You're not just going to spray and pray. You're actually going to sight in. It may not be it may not be a well aimed sight, but it is going to be sighted in.
Let me ask you something. How familiar are you with the Spanish-American War?
Not at all. And we don't have the time for it.
Let's just say with how slow the military was to change to adopting modern weapons and stuff, I'm surprised that everybody in that war wasn't armed with single-shot Springfield rifles. But thankfully, they were armed with Craig Jorgensen's.
Craig Jorgensen's? What is that? Some sort of like Swedish fucking IKEA gun?
The Craig Jorgensen was one of the first bolt-action rifles adopted by the U.S. military. There were two of them at the time. One of them was the Lee Navy, which featured a straight pull bolt, And the other one was the Craig Jorgensen.
Was
Which
it any good?
Yeah, the Craig Jorgensen was a very good rifle. As a matter of fact, I'd like to rather have a Craig Jorgensen over Lee Navy simply because of the capsule magazine on the Craig Jorgensen.
Hmm.
I'm
Okay,
sorry.
so
I am
look,
very, very passionate about guns. They trigger my autism.
looking into 5.56 ammunition, it looks like there were two types of 5.56 developed. One was the M193 and one was the M855. It's almost the exact same round. The difference is the M855 is a heavier projectile with slightly less gunpowder, and so it's theoretically more accurate. But since it's not a solid core, there's more variables. M193 out of a 20-inch and 16-inch barrel is generally more accurate than an M855. And it looks like the reason why the M855 is less accurate is because the core is often off-center. So there's a bad methodology in jacketing the bullet. Interesting. Okay, so it is now 6:55, or for you two, 7:55.
Yep.
And it is that
7:56
time.
For me, so I'm a minute in the future, it seems.
Well, now it's 6:56 for me. But being that as it will, we are going to go ahead and... Oh, what the fuck? Stoner, what's with the pictures?
Which ones?
The two that you've posted since the Elizabeth Warren meme.
They're pretty great.
Let's just say I hate John Lennon.
Agreed.
Hate.
He's not the worst Lenin, but he's still not a good Lenin either.
We talking about the Beatle?
Yes.
I don't mind him.
Yeah.
Oh, the worst thing about John Lennon wasn't actually John Lennon. The worst thing about John Lennon, obviously, was fucking Yoko Ono.
I knew you were gonna go there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean the worst thing about Sonny and Cher was Cher, so.
Very true.
Hey, a little fun fact. Do you remember the Scooby-Doo movies that came out in the 60s or 70s?
Yes.
Are you sure the movie? I thought that was just a series in the 60s.
Yeah, it was a TV series
Yeah,
where they had different
definitely.
actors and stuff on there. Did you know they actually had Sonny and Cher on an episode?
Really?
Yes.
Were they
And
were they the villains or were they?
No, they were they were protagonists with the crew. I see they've had the Three Stooges on a couple of episodes.
They
Sonny
even
and
had the
Cher.
Globetrotters.
Really?
Yeah, the Harlem Globetrotters were on quite a few.
Like as
the
themselves
Addams
or
Family.
as other characters? Like were they playing themselves or were they just
They were
voicing
playing
characters?
themselves.
Oh, I see.
They
Okay.
even had Jerry. They even had Jerry Reed on an episode.
Okay, we'll get into that at another point in time.
Yeah,
It
it's
is
time for us to get
6:58.
out.
Alright.
It is 6:58. Let's go ahead and do our outros. We will again start with our resident redneck from the South, formerly of Alabama, now in South Carolina. Please say goodnight, Stoner.
Sig Zion!
The fuck was
Leon.
that?
Sig Zion!
Big Leon.
He said Sig Zio.
Okay. And then we will go ahead and go to our resident Kanakistani from the Soviet state of Kanakistan, our dirty Frenchy Frenchman. Please say goodnight, Dale.
Well, everyone, it's been a great show. We somehow managed to turn a discussion on pizza into first how we need to overthrow the government and then back to guns. Somehow, but we did it. And I
This
hope
is-
to see you all.
This is
Good.
what ADHD gets all of us.
Yes. And I hope to see you all next time when we kick it off in a couple of weeks after our 2-week hiatus. Have a good night, everyone, and see you next time.
Also, Morgan Blackpaw says goodnight.
Okay. With that said, I wish everyone a good night, and we will see you all in 2 weeks. That will be June 8th. Remember it, be there, or don't. If you don't, well, you're an idiot. We'll talk to y'all later. Love you.
So back to this Scooby-Doo talk. Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen the old show, but I don't remember ever seeing the Harlem Globetrotters there. So it wasn't the original, the original 60s or 70s series.
Hey. Is it live?
Hey, we're still live.
Oh, that's interesting.